Hello and welcome to Tech Raven. I'm Nigel Cooper and today I'm going to be doing a review on the KRK S10.4 subwoofer, which I've got sitting underneath my desk here, directly beneath the right hand side monitor. Now, not too long ago, I actually did a review on the KRK S8.4, which is a subwoofer that I bought about 10 months ago. And back then I thought it was a brilliant subwoofer, and I still do think it's a brilliant subwoofer. However, after using it for about 10 months, in hindsight, for these monitors, I personally should have gone for the S10.4, which has got a 10-inch woofer in it instead of an 8-inch woofer. Now, the reason for that is these Kali Iron 8 monitors that I've got here either side have actually got 8-inch bass drivers in them already. So the KRK S8.4 has also got an 8-inch bass driver in it. And these Kalis actually go down to 37 Hertz, at least on paper, but I'll get into that a little bit more shortly. Whereas the S8.4 actually goes down to 34.5. So I was only actually gaining a little bit on the bottom of what these monitors will actually go down to already. However, it still worked and it's still really good, because what I was getting with the KRK S8.4 with the 8-inch driver was a little bit more low end. But because of the way I had the crossover set, it meant that the lower end of the Kalis didn't have to work quite as hard, which meant that the mids and the upper frequencies were working more efficiently, should we say. So it did work, but in hindsight, I just felt that the S10.4, which has got a 10-inch driver, and it actually goes down lower. The S10.4 goes down to 30 Hertz as opposed to 34.5. So it goes down lower because it's got a bigger driver. And after using it for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've found that the bottom end has got even more weight, even more slam, and it's even heavier. And I've actually got the crossover on it set to 60, and it is even better than before. I mean, I said about the S8.4 that it was a marriage made in heaven with these monitors. Well, the S10.4 is even better. It's an even better marriage, if that makes sense. And I'm really happy with it. So I bought mine from Anderton's in the UK for £340, which is about what it costs. The S8.4, the smaller one, comes in at about £257. So it is going up about £80 in price to get that larger 10-inch driver. They do actually do an S12.4, but that would have been definitely overkill for a small studio of this size. Now, I've got a few little bits of details here. I'm just going to go through, where are we? Okay, just a couple of things I want to point out. A lot of people say that you should always match the brand of subwoofer to the monitors. Now, this isn't true at all, because what you've got to remember about subwoofers is they're only putting out low frequencies, low bass notes that don't really have too much in the way of characteristics, in the same way that a center speaker would in a home cinema surround sound system, or your regular hi-fi speakers, or even your monitors. So when it comes to matching up, you don't have to go for the same brand. I mean, I've got Kali monitors here, but that doesn't mean I've got to go for a Kali subwoofer. It's not that important. Whereas if you've got a home cinema surround system, you would want to have the center speaker the same brand and model as your front, right and left channel speakers, because you've got all that mid frequency and all that's important, and the characteristics and the color of those speakers should be matched up, but not when it comes to a subwoofer. So don't worry about matching them up. You don't have to do that. So you can actually put a KRK subwoofer with any monitors, no matter who makes them. Now, the reason I got it is it just basically improves mixing and mastering, because you've got the extra frequency. It goes down lower. So if you're into photography, it's like adding an extra 3 or 4 stops of dynamic range to your camera sensor, if that makes sense. And that's basically what this subwoofer does down here. It's just giving you those extra low frequencies. Now, a lot of producers and engineers will say, don't bother with a sub, you don't need it. Now, I disagree with this. I think you do, especially if you compose any kind of electronic music, hip hop, house, dance, industrial, anything like that. You're going to need a subwoofer so that you can mix and master those lower frequencies and sub-frequencies a lot more efficiently, and you're going to hear those synth pads. I've got a Nord Lead A1 synthesizer here, and I quite often compose music that's got deep synth pads, and you're going to want to hear them. So any kind of music that you suspect is going to be played in a nightclub or a disco, do you still get those? I don't know, but anything that's going to be played in a nightclub, Nightclubs have got subwoofers all around the corners of the floor, and they've got the mid-range speakers higher up the walls. So when you're mixing and mastering, it's also about what you can feel as well as what you can hear for that nightclub sense. So if you're mixing music for nightclubs, like I said, any kind of dance, electronic or hip hop music, you're going to want a subwoofer so that you can mix and hear and feel those frequencies in your mix as well. So that's why I got one. Now, at the end of the day, it's not rocket science setting these things up. A lot of people say, oh, setting up subwoofers is really complicated. It's not. Just don't overthink it. It's not rocket science. All you have to do is just set the crossover and the roll-off to match your main right and left monitors, and just get the room positioning right, and that's it. Now, as far as this KRK S10.4 is concerned, it's similar to the smaller 8.4. The sonic character of it is absolutely fantastic. It's just well-rounded, very smooth, very deep, and it's got lots of low-end slam. So in terms of sonic characteristics, it's absolutely fantastic. I really love it for that. I'll just tell you what my settings are, which I've got here. I've got the crossover set to 60 Hertz, but that's basically to match what these Kali monitors go down to. So depending on what monitors you've got, you might want to adjust that. But okay, what I was saying earlier, the Kali monitors claim to go down to 37 Hertz, and the subwoofer, the S10.4 KRK subwoofer I've got down here, claims to go down to 30 Hertz. But what you got to remember is, although that's true on paper, these manufacturers would have done these tests in an anechoic chamber, which is basically an acoustically treated room of the right length, so they're going to be able to measure these frequencies exact. So for example, if a subwoofer claims to go down to 30 Hertz, it will be true, but because of the way it's measured in an anechoic chamber, regular rooms like this one are quite destructive, and they probably won't. In fact, this room definitely doesn't support that 30 Hertz spec. So the reality is that rooms like this, you know, this small one might go down to 45 or 50 Hertz at best. Now, this is just physics, because at the end of the day, a small room probably won't be able to support the wavelength of 30 Hertz. So the KRK S10.4, which goes down to 30, in this small studio, realistically, is probably only going to go down to 40. So you have to bear in mind things like this as well when you're setting crossovers. And that's why I decided to set the crossover of mine to 60, because you might be thinking, well, the Kalis go down to 37, why didn't I basically set it lower? Well, on the S10.4 you can't anyway, it only goes down to 60 for the crossover. So I had the crossover at 60. The volume I've got just after 12 o'clock. It's between 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock position on the dial there, just to feed through the right amount of volume. And while I'm on volume, once you set the volume on the sub to match the volume of your monitors, so on the back of both these monitors, I've got a volume control. So I've got those set, and I set the volume of the subwoofer to match that. So the volume is the same and it's perfectly balanced. After that, I control the volume here on my audio interface, because if I was to turn the volume up on the back of both the monitors, it's not going to match. The subwoofer is not going to be giving enough volume through, or likewise, if I change the volume on the sub, it's going to go too heavy or too light. So once you set the volume on the subwoofer and on the monitors, you don't touch those volume controls anymore. You leave them so they're matched, and you control the volume via your audio interface. I've got the input sensitivity set to normal. The polarity I've got set to 180 instead of 0. It might be different for you depending on how far away from the subwoofer you are, and the way the waveform comes out of the subwoofer, whether your ears are going to be when it's on the dip down or on the dip up. So what you do there is you sit in your listening position and you have somebody else flick the polarity switch on the subwoofer, and the one that's correct is the one where the bass feels the weightiest and the heaviest and the most prominent. Whether that's going to be 180 or 0 in your room will depend on your studio. I've got the standby set to off on mine, and the ground and lift, I've just got that set to lift. So that's my settings there. Okay, a couple of other things to bear in mind here is you might want to factor in an extra £50 for cables, because what you got to remember is that the cables are going to be going from the subwoofer to the audio interface. So you've got cables going from the monitors down to the sub, and then from the subwoofer up to the audio interface. You're going to need 4 cables, so factor in an extra £50 potentially for that. For these KRK subwoofers, whether it's the 8.4, the 10.4 or the 12.4, you can get a mesh grill because it doesn't actually come with a mesh protection grill. Now, I'm not too bothered about this. I've heard that they're a little bit fiddly to fit because of the gasket, and I've even heard a couple of people say that it can actually muffle the lower frequencies, although I can't quite get my head around that because low frequencies, you know, having a grill on shouldn't really affect them at all, but I've heard it, but I can't vouch for either of these two things. If you're in the UK, you generally can't get them here. You'd be looking at Thomann in Germany to order one, or if you're in the USA, Sweetwater I think it is, or B&H do them, and they're quite cheap if you actually wanted to get one of those. In terms of build quality, honestly, this thing is rock solid. It's actually a lot heavier than the 8.4 that I had before. The S8.4 with the 8-inch driver was 26.5 pound, whereas this new one is 35 pound in weight, which is just under 16 kilograms, whereas the 8-inch driver version is 12 kilograms. So it's heavier. It's not too much bigger, probably about an inch higher and an inch longer and maybe half an inch deeper. So it doesn't take up too much extra room. And it's just a really solid, heavy device. It actually comes with this, it's kind of like a mouse mat, maybe a little bit thinner than a mouse mat, with a peel-off back that sticks on the bottom. So if you got it on the wooden floor, you got this nice sort of cushioning that you can stick on it. And all the knobs and dials on the back feel nice and tactile and strong, like it will last a long time, like it's not going to break anytime soon. So yeah, that's my evaluation of the KRK S10.4 subwoofer. Like I said, in hindsight, it works a lot better than the smaller S8.4 for this room size, and it is actually better. If you've got monitors that have got an 8-inch driver in them like these, then yeah, I wouldn't really be looking at the S8.4. I would definitely be looking at the S10.4, or if you've got a really big room and a lot of space, the S12.4. But for me, in this room, the S10.4 has got those extra frequencies at the bottom that just fill it out a lot nicer than the S8.4 did. So would I recommend it? Absolutely. It's a fantastic subwoofer. So there we are. You've been watching Tech Raven. I'm Nigel Cooper. Click on the subscribe button if you like the content, and click the bell icon so you can get notifications whenever I upload new videos. Till the next time, bye for now. Just stay cool.